we'll just give it a minute to allow others to join. The numbers are just still climbing. So I'll be back in a tick. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Alex Hattingh, and I head up People and Culture for Employment Hero. And today we're going to be talking about effective one-on-ones and feedback for both remote teams and hybrid workforces. As we know, our world changed overnight in March, and we all had to shift everything we started to do as an organisation. For us at Employment Hero, we had to change the way we approached sales, marketing, our product roadmap. We also had to figure out how to deal with working remotely and from home. And we've had a lot of lessons learned through doing that. Let's admit it, COVID-19 has been the biggest change management experiment that any of us have been through, especially as small to medium businesses. And the employee experience is now more vital than ever. There are a lot of employment engagement strategies that we can use as we work in these hybrid and remote workforces. Today, we're going to specifically talk about internal communications, one-on-ones, and how to do these effectively, as well as feedback. I just wanted to touch on how management philosophy has changed over the years. It took us decades to go from the industrial corporation to hierarchical leadership, and then a decade again to move into collaborative management, and then a whole nother decade to move into company as a network, where we were very much focused on our mission, purpose, and empowering our teams. COVID, though, meant that we very rapidly moved to a whole new model based around empathy, trust, resilience, and growth. It's all about the individual, it's all about learning, and it's also about wellness. Not just physical and financial wellness, but mental wellness as well, which makes internal communications just all the more important to make sure we're engaging our employees, that they're happy, and that they're productive. So when we refer to internal communication, we're talking about processes and tools that allow for an effective flow of both information and collaboration amongst all participants within the organisation, whether they're employees, consultants, or anyone who touches your organisation. But why do we need internal communication strategies? Daniel Pink, who put years of research into a book called Drive, was all around what motivates us. His years of research found that as humans, we have three innate psychological needs: their competence, autonomy, and relatedness. Now, when they're satisfied, as individuals, we're all motivated, productive, and happy. And through what we'll talk through today, you can meet these three innate psychological needs. A Harvard Business Study review also found the communication issues that prevent effective leadership. And would you believe the top one is not recognizing your employees' achievements? The other one is not giving clear directions, and not having time to meet with your employees was at 52%. At 51% was refusing to talk to your subordinates. This same Harvard Business Review research study found what the cost of poor internal communication was. They found that 35% of employees were disengaged and that their salary is wasted. There was an average of 12% of working time wasted due to inefficiency, and companies with disengaged employees had a high turnover rate at an average of 34%. So what are some tips and what have we learned around this new hybrid world of work? We've learned that cadence is vital. So input a communication routine across your organization. For us, this includes daily stand-ups for teams, weekly team meetings, weekly one-on-ones with your employees, and weekly is really important as we work remotely, and company meetings, quite often referred to as town halls and all hands. And also make sure your employees know what tools to use and when. It's really good to cover this kind of information during onboarding and induction. When should I use Slack compared to Teams? Or when should I use Zoom? And when should I use email? A really good example there is Slack or Teams should be used for internal communications, leaving your inbox and email for external communications. We've also found that transparency is key when you communicate. Even if it's not great news, it's really important that you're transparent to your employees about how you're performing as a business. They want to know and they deserve to know. Also, listening to your employees. So, asking them feedback through surveys and through your one-on-ones and your meetings, and making sure you, of course, read out on those survey results and responses. If I was to show you what we do at Employment Hero in terms of our company rhythm, when we look at a decade, we look at our purpose, vision, values, and our BHAG, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal. Annually, we review our goals and objectives. Quarterly, we have a theme with objectives and key results. Monthly, we do reviews, surveys, and reports. Weekly, we do one-on-one and coaching. We also have an all hands now that we work remotely every single Friday. Daily, we do team huddles, targets, and we have social events. Hourly, we have announcements and really great reward and recognition. We have constant chat over video and Slack. If you were to look at what we call the 4x3 communication cadence, you can group it by leadership, company, team, and individual. We then have various methods of how you check in. For example, at our leadership level, we have check-ins on a daily basis on 3 days a week, and then we have a longer meeting 1 day a week. At a company level, we have a weekly all hands. We have Slack channels. We have Friday night Zoom happy hour and weekly team updates. The same with teams, weekly team updates and one-on-ones between managers and their employees. And then how do we keep the energy up? So we've really found that turning videos on is vital. We've instilled objectives and key results, or goals and KPIs, and a way to capture those really shows your employees how you trust them and means that working from home is all based on output as opposed to feeling as though you have to sit at your desk all day without having any freedom to enjoy the benefits of working remotely. We have a lot of reward and recognition and celebrations through our own platform, Employment Hero, also through Slack. It's a really great method. We survey our employees to ask for feedback, and we read out those results and let them know what actions we're taking. We have one-on-one templates that we use that I'll talk you through. We theme up our Friday all hands. A really good example was last week we were learning about New Zealand, which is a country we've just expanded to, and our theme was New Zealand. So everyone came to the all hands, whether they had their Zoom backdrop New Zealand themed, or whether they were dressed up, or whether they might have had a cocktail that was New Zealand themed. Having a virtual Hangouts channel on Teams or Slack is really great, so people can drop in if they're lonely or needing a social connection. We also have a themed Thursday night happy hour for anyone that wants to join, and we quite often use that to spotlight teams where we will ask them some really fun and interesting questions, like if you were to be part of a fictional family, what family would that be? Show us the last photo on or the latest photo on your phone and talk to us about what the photo means to you. And Slack or Teams have a social sharing channel. Keep things fun. We have an animals being cute channel, a social sharing channel, and it gets used all day. It can get noisy if you have notifications turned on. So most people have those notifications turned off and they just go and look at them when they need a break during the day. And it does keep things fun. I'd love to launch a poll, Jules, if you wouldn't mind, just to see out of everyone who's on the call, whether you have changed your internal communications strategy or cadence since working remotely. Just wait for those answers to come in. Great, so I will share those results, and 78% of everyone on the call has changed their internal communication strategy. So for the 24% who haven't, I'm not sure if you could be essential workers and not have the ability to be working remotely and have a hybrid workforce, or perhaps you're joining us today to learn some more about how to do things effectively. So let's move on to that. Strategy one that I wanted to talk you through was one-on-ones. Now, this is a new concept to a lot of people, and I love this Dilbert cartoon. As funny as it is, though, it's really, really true. You need to have your one-on-ones and catch-ups on a weekly basis. The impact on your employees, if you don't do this, is really not good. They become disengaged and they don't feel recognized or valued. So make sure you've got that time in your calendar. And here's some research from Gallup, which shows that if there are regularly scheduled meetings with a manager, then they're going to be 3 times more engaged than an employee who does not have a regularly scheduled meeting with their manager. So, for those of you asking what are one-on-ones, they're a scheduled meeting in your calendar, also in your mental map, for open-ended and anticipated conversations between a manager and an employee. So they're not like status reports or tactical meetings. A one-on-one is a place for coaching, mentorship, giving context, or even venting. So the one-on-one really goes beyond an open door policy and dedicates time on a regular cadence for teammates and leaders to connect and communicate. And you really can use it for venting. Sometimes employees need to vent. They might want to vent about another team. And you don't have to always make it formal. If you don't have an agenda, having that time in the calendar, you might say to your employee, hey, let's not video today. Why don't we both jump on the phone and use the time to go for a walk and catch up while we're walking? You're exercising, you're getting the employee out of the house, but you're still connecting. So, some tips for effective one-on-ones. Make sure you prepare and review notes. So, have a shared document or template between you and your employee and make sure you review it prior to your scheduled one-on-one. This shared document gives your employee a space to make notes throughout the week, which makes their life a lot easier. Now, before the one-on-one, try to take the time to reflect on the previous week. Are there any achievements you need to acknowledge or thank your team member for? Pay attention to what makes your team member great. Also, make sure you're present. This is a conscious choice and it does take effort. You have noise, you have Slack coming through, you have email coming through. So, for myself, when I have a one on one, I make sure all of those apps and noises are turned off or shut down and I get back to them after the one on one. By being present, you're showing your employee you genuinely care about them and you respect their time. Also, don't underestimate the power of positivity. Research has found, and this comes again from Daniel Pink, that the key to motivating high performance is making progress on meaningful work. So, how do you use this power of positivity? When you're preparing for your one on one, have a bit of a think about what your high performer has done and made progress on in terms of meaningful work, and acknowledge that during the one-on-one. You'll be surprised the impact that it has on their engagement. Next up, begin your one-on-one with open-ended questions. Remember, a one-on-one is about your employee, not you. So some really good opening questions are, how are you feeling? What's on your mind? What are your roadblocks? And how can I help? Most importantly, listen to what's being said. An important aspect of being a manager is to make sure your employees feel heard, safe, and empowered. So next up, you need to be the facilitator of solutions. So you have to uncover what your employee is excited about. How can you mentor them to be successful and unblock them to do their best work? Here are some tips to let that happen. First of all, confirm what you've heard. Did you interpret it correctly? Because sometimes you won't always interpret correctly. Disclose your own weaknesses sometimes. If someone shared with you that they're struggling, and then you can share back places that you've struggled in your career, it will make them feel in a psychologically safe place. Yes, it takes vulnerability for you to do this as a manager. It's really helpful though. Be unconditionally on your employee's side, even and especially when giving them blunt feedback about opportunities for growth. Let them know, Alex, I'm about to give you some really direct feedback. However, this feedback is to make sure you succeed. So I hope it doesn't come across as too blunt, and then let's have a conversation about it. Always respect them as a person, not just a performer as tasks. Kind of treat them like a peer during the one-on-one. It will make them feel really recognized and respected. Always make sure you follow up and close the loop on anything being asked for or needed. And that might be, for example, a roadblock that they're asking for help with. And that's where having a template and a shared document can really help, because it gives you that documentation to go back and remind yourself what you talked about. Now you might think, oh, how am I going to remember to close the loop all the time? Simply put a recurring calendar note in to remind yourself. It might be every Monday for 2 hours, follow up on my one-on-ones. It's a really good way just to spark yourself to go back to that shared document and look at it. Now, if you're not a manager, how do you best leverage your one-on-one? So it's your time to express what's on your mind, brainstorm ideas, or communicate future goals. Make sure you use the time wisely. So again, set aside time prior to your meeting to organize what topics you'd like to discuss, or throughout the week as things pop into your mind. Instead of writing them in your notebook, put them in the shared doc that you have between you and your manager. If you're feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, blocked, or even excited, think about why you feel this way and outline it, and think of any solutions that you want to work through with your manager. You don't want to go to your manager and say, I feel frustrated about X team, and not come to the table with a potential solution. Try and think that little bit ahead. Remain open to discussing what's really going on and where you need support. So, as an individual, be prepared to be vulnerable yourself if you are having barriers or roadblocks, or if you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed. And ask for what you want in layman's terms. Remember, none of us are mind readers. Discuss things in specifics. And again, writing them on that shared document really is helpful. This is what one-on-ones look like through Employment Hero. If you don't have Employment Hero, it's really easy to set up a shared doc through either Google Documents or through Microsoft, whatever your platform is. We'll send out a template and a bundle at the end of this, which will show you what questions we use within our one-on-one. And yesterday, we just launched a specific sales template for our sales team members, really focused on revenue and goals. I'd love to launch our second poll, which is going to see how many of us are actually doing one-on-ones. So, how regularly do you hold one-on-ones with your team members? Okay, so we have weekly 28%, fortnightly 18%, monthly 21%, other 21%, and not at all 13%. I can't urge you enough to start having them weekly if you can. You don't have to use the entire time. And by having a one-on-one weekly, you can actually make it 30 minutes instead of 45 or an hour. You'll find that you will get a lot more out of your employees. They'll be more engaged. You'll be more on top of what they're doing. And during this hybrid world that we're working in, you will find you will absolutely see the results. So I can't urge you strongly enough to make them weekly. Next, let's talk about feedback and the impact it has on your employees. According to Marcus Buckingham, the premise of feedback is to help people do better. So it's really there to help individuals thrive and excel. What is feedback? It's just about telling people what we think of their performance and how they should do it better, whether they're giving an effective presentation, leading a team, or creating a strategy. Why give feedback? Feedback is a key ingredient to your success. Without it, you don't know where you can improve. And would you believe that studies have shown that 4 out of 5 employees appreciate both positive and negative feedback? The same study found that 40% of people with little or no feedback actually identify themselves as actively disengaged. When it comes to engagement, employees who receive feedback, good or bad, at least once a week are twice as likely to be highly engaged and highly productive as a result. Reflect yourselves on when you've received feedback throughout your career. Absolutely, the first time you receive direct feedback or criticism, it's hard. It's not easy to take. However, would you be where you are and would you be successful without receiving that feedback? Giving feedback, though, it can be a challenge to navigate. So the research doesn't lie. Feedback is king, in theory. But in practice, it's not easy. And I can speak personally, it's not easy to give difficult feedback. You've got social anxieties that can make it really difficult for managers. It makes it even harder if you're giving a peer direct feedback. Feedback gets even harder in this hybrid remote workforce. Also, if you've got people spread across different locations and time zones. We now have an incredible new feedback feature to facilitate feedback within Employment Hero. But if you don't use Employment Hero, it's really easy to use a shared doc or even Slack or even Teams to be giving feedback in a really timely manner when you're not having the ability to just walk over to somebody's desk or to say to them at the end of a meeting, "Oh, Alex, do you have 5 minutes? I just want to have a chat to you," and then give the feedback to them in real time. So who uses our feedback feature in Employment Hero? Our managers use it to give their employees feedback and to give other managers feedback. And our employees use it to give their managers feedback and to give other employees feedback. And you can easily view the feedback, which is great. So feedback has recently been in the spotlight. You've got Kim Scott, who talks about radical candor, and that's all about being super honest. You've got Patty McCord, who talks about giving feedback in real time and being really honest. And you've got Brene Brown in Dare to Lead, who talks about, again, radical candor and being honest and being really daring and bold and courageous to give feedback in real time that is real. Then you've got the Harvard Business Review talking about research that says feedback fails. Their research showed that criticizing people doesn't help them excel at all. So what's right? Well, when we delve into Patty McCord's research and her personal experience, the best feedback is always in the moment or as close to it as possible, rather than waiting months for a formal meeting to tell a colleague you didn't like the way X, Y, or Z went. At that point, you can barely remember what it was that happened to have a productive conversation about it. So it's all about doing it in a timely manner. So we need to figure out how to do that in this hybrid remote world of work. There is an art to giving feedback. So day-to-day feedback happens pretty organically during conversations. For example, Alex, I think you could improve your knowledge on this by speaking to Dave. And that happens less now that we're not all in the office together. So we have to make a conscious effort to video someone and pick up the phone even, or to be sending them feedback through a feedback tool in real time. There is more structured feedback, though, that you might want to give to someone when you can't talk to them immediately after you want to give them the feedback. For example, the way they've behaved in a meeting. If you capture the feedback in a tool, it's there for both the employee and the manager. They also have the ability to act on that feedback immediately. They also have the ability, if they're emotional about it, to go back and reread the feedback when they have time. Now, please be super mindful that there are certain types of feedback that you are best to give in a conversation. And in this hybrid world, that means by video or in person if you live close to the person, or you can arrange to be in the office on the same day under COVID safe restrictions. But always try and capture it within a tool following your conversation. Again, this makes sure that the individual can go back and reread the feedback when they're in the right frame of mind to figure out their action plan on how they're going to improve. Here's a model which I absolutely love in terms of how to give feedback, and it's called SBI, Situation, Behavior, and Impact. It's where you describe the situation, then you talk about the behavior, and then you talk about the impact of that behavior. I really love this model because when you talk about the behavior, you remove the attitude or the personal nature of anything from the conversation. It's very black and white, very observable, and very easy to explain to the person. So here's an example of the situation. Alex, at the client meeting earlier today, you balanced sharing ideas with hearing them and asking for their feedback. The impact? The client told me that they thought we clearly understood their needs, so thank you. And then to frame that in a more negative way or constructive way, again, you start with the situation, you follow with the behavior, and then you talk about the impact. Alex, when you presented to your client today, you presented everything succinctly. However, I did observe that you did not listen to the client when they interjected. You spoke over their comments and did not acknowledge their concerns. Then you move on to the impact. I observed our client shaking their head, illustrating their displeasure. Alex, this meant they walked away not feeling great and not a good experience. And the real impact was we didn't close the deal. Now, there's also interpersonal feedback, and you can still apply the SBI model to peer-to-peer feedback. An example might be if I was in a meeting with someone either on my team or another team. The situation could be, at the team meeting today, Sam, when we discussed your project, you interrupted teammates as they shared their ideas. As a result, people stopped contributing as much. Team members felt disengaged. Did you notice this? So you can see how this has been framed up for Sam as an example to point something out to her that's going to help her improve in her own career and how she's perceived by others by showing her the impact and actually asking her if she noticed the impact on others around her. So if you're having trouble or struggling to pluck up the courage to give a peer feedback, just remind yourself that you're helping them to be successful and that if you were the person interrupting in the meeting, you would like for it to be pointed out to you as well. Now, if you're giving peer-to-peer feedback, always follow up with what you need or what you want so that the person understands and so that they do actually action it. So in this situation, it might be, Sam, I need you to wait and listen as team members give ideas. Or Sam, I want you to consider when to back down or drop an issue. So you're actually telling the person in layman's terms what you're really wanting by giving this feedback. Always prepare for your feedback. Don't give it off the cuff if you're using the SBI model. Think about what your intention in sharing the feedback is. What would a successful outcome look like? Then frame it. What was the situation? What was the behavior? So, what did the person do? What was the impact of the behavior on you or others? And what information do you have to support what you're going to say? Is it an observation of others' behaviors? Did people become disengaged? Did people become defensive? Some kind of backup information that you can present to the person. Now, if you're emotionally charged about the feedback, personally prepare for the conversation by using the SBI tool. Also think about how the individual might react and how will you prepare for this? Might the person actually emotionally get upset? How are you going to respond and react? With empathy, I would hope, but do try and think about how they're going to respond. And then assess, how are you going to give the feedback? Verbally or through a feedback tool? In this hybrid world, you can give feedback verbally very easily over video, and it can take less than 10 minutes. You just need to ping the person and say, hey, Alex, I've got some feedback for me. Let me know when you've got 10 minutes. This is what feedback looks like through our own tool, Employment Hero. And this is for someone on my team, Charlotte, where I was giving her feedback about doing a great job on induction. And it just means my manager can see the feedback on Charlotte, and Charlotte can see it in a centralized place where she can go back to it when we do reviews and we have coaching sessions. Again, if you don't have Employment Hero, it's really easy to set up shared documents through Google Docs or through your Microsoft suite. So, how do you actually introduce and implement a strong cadence of one-on-ones and feedback across your team? Implement that cadence and make it transparent to absolutely everyone in your organization, because this gives those employees not having one-on-ones permission to ask their manager or to simply book one in on a weekly basis themselves. It also holds your managers accountable for the cadence of making sure they're having one-on-ones. Also, share this research with your managers to give them a call to action. It will help create a burning platform if they understand the impact of one-on-ones and feedback on employee engagement, productivity, and happiness. Also, refer to the Effective One-on-One bundle for a free guide and template that you can actually give to your managers that will be really helpful for them. And if you don't have a feedback model in place, share the situation, behavior, impact model framework with your managers. I think they'll find it really helpful. So, practical takeaways when thinking about a hybrid world, and what can we action today? So, first of all, apply trust and put that regular cadence of communication with your team into play. And always use the most effective communication tool. Make sure your employees know what tools to use when. Reward and recognition during one-on-ones is really important. And it's important when giving feedback as well. So don't only give constructive feedback. If someone's done something really good, go back to that Daniel Pink research. Knowing that you've made progress on meaningful work really motivates humans. And in a hybrid world, coaching and L&D are vital. So implement those one-on-ones, have a template where you are talking about careers and you are coaching, and you're opening the door to coaching by it being all about the employee and giving them the opportunity to ask for your help where they need it. And by having a weekly cadence, you will find this gets easier and easier for your employee to be asking for help without feeling like they're failing. And I can't stress enough, have that discussion on career development while you're giving feedback. Understand where your employee wants their career to go and how they can grow as individuals. So thank you so much for joining us. I will flip over now to Q&A to see if we have any questions, and also feel free to unmute. We would love to hear from anyone. Sorry, I'm just moving the Q&A screen over. Okay, so we have, what does L&D mean? Oh, great question. I apologize. We often use acronyms without realizing that we don't know what we're saying. It's learning and development, which in terms of career development and learning and development, all studies are showing that learning and development and career development sit in the top 4 desires of all employees, which are really strong statistics in terms of what people want. I don't know if we have any other questions. I think, oh, we do have one more. Joe O'Brien, I really like the SBI model. I haven't used it before. I've used the GROW model, so thank you for sharing. Yeah, the SBI model is fantastic. The GROW model, though, Joe, is also really fantastic. For anyone that wants more information on that, please let us know. It's really around career development and having your employees own their career development. With the GROW model, it's about you as a manager asking your employees questions around growth and really giving them a call to action to own how they're going to develop themselves in areas that they've identified where they need to develop. So both models work really well, both for different things. So thanks, Joe, really appreciate it. And we have another question. How would you approach feedback over a disrespectful employee when they are disrespectful to a manager due to the emotion it creates? Great question. If this is a peer, I would use the situation behavior impact model. And I would say, Alex, I don't know if you've noticed or been aware of this, but the situation was we were in a team meeting and you really appeared to disrespect your manager by the way you spoke to him and you questioned him. I don't know if you noticed, but people seemed a little shocked. And I think it's impacting the way people perceive you as a person. And I think they think that you don't respect your own boss. So give them that impact as well. Again, it's really hard to pluck up the courage. Just keep in mind that if you were in that situation, you'd want someone to give you feedback. And also by giving them the feedback, you're not just helping them, you're helping your entire team, and you're no doubt helping your manager as well. Fantastic question. Another question, it seems like there are a lot of meetings. How many hours per week do the meetings total for you guys? Oh gosh, I'd have to sit there and count. So we do our team meetings in the morning just for half an hour. They're by team. They don't usually take half an hour. In fact, it's extremely rare for them to take half an hour. It generally takes 15 minutes. One-on-ones schedule half an hour. Quite often they'll take 45 minutes, but after every single half-hour slot for a one-on-one, I recommend you schedule follow-up and close the loop time for 30 minutes afterwards. That way it's fresh in your mind, you're following up on what you need to do, and it's in your calendar and blocked off. So whilst time consuming, you will find that your employees are more productive and more engaged if you're doing these one-on-ones. And we've found personally, I found our daily huddles amazing across the board. It's very transparent across the company. Everybody knows that every single person is involved in a morning meeting. Some teams also have afternoon meetings to end the day. And I really look forward to it. I get to see my team every morning, and it's such a great way to start your day. And, you know, if you are having a bit of a tough day, it's a really good way to feel uplifted, to start that morning session with what was the best thing that happened to you yesterday, or what's your celebration of the day, or even your weekly meetings. We start with a celebration for the week, and it really is a good way to set things off. Another question, how to approach employees who are always defensive when you discuss any area of improvement? Great question. I would apply the SBI model and I would say to them, Alex, last time I gave you feedback, the last 3 times I gave you feedback, you were defensive. Let me rehash the way that you reacted. You cried, you became defensive, you blamed somebody else. What's the impact of that? you're not improving, and you're not listening. So just use the SBI model to point out to them that they're being defensive, but also make sure you're on their side, as I mentioned. So give them that psychological safety to say, this is constructive feedback. I'm not saying that you're failing. I'm on your side, Alex. I'm giving you this feedback because I'm your manager and I want you to improve. So we have to figure out a way for you to not be defensive and to put actions around how you're going to improve. How many people is too many for one person to manage? Andrew, that's a great question. There's been a ton of research done around span of control. Generally, it comes out at around 9 to 10. I actually think that's too many. For example, we have one manager at the moment managing 16 employees, and that's just gets to the point where it's untenable and they can't do weekly one-on-ones. They're having to do fortnightly one-on-ones. So my personal opinion is around the 6 to 7 mark, but you do see examples such as us where we have one manager managing 16 employees. Another question. I have managers refusing to be consistent with employees on booking in one-on-ones. Any tips? Yeah, make it compulsory, make it one of their KPIs as managers to be regularly holding one-on-ones and have them report back or have it part of their KPI that as a manager, they are absolutely to be holding one-on-ones with their employees. Again, if they're going to shy away from that by making it cadence across the company, you're actually empowering the employee to book or ask for a one-on-one themselves. We have another question from Alice. If you are giving feedback to a team member that might be upsetting to them, should there be a third person present? Alice, you can certainly offer a third person. It might scare off the individual though and have them think it's going to be a performance discussion. So my recommendation wouldn't be that you invite a third person. My recommendation would be that you let them know that you're going to be giving them some tough feedback. If they get upset during the meeting, there is nothing wrong with saying, Alex, you seem to be really upset about this feedback. I'm going to stop this meeting now because I want to give you time to breathe, to take this in, and I'll reschedule some time over the next 48 hours for us to have this discussion. That way you're rescheduling it in and you're still giving them the feedback. You're also acknowledging to them that the feedback that they're receiving is tough, and you're respecting them as a person by giving them that time to just breathe and allow them to be upset and then come back to the feedback at a better time. Another question from Joe. With the SBI model, I am assuming the intention is to encourage their response, not just a one-way conversation. Absolutely, Joe, you want to encourage their response as much as you can. Another question from Sabrina. My team works over 24 hours, 7 days a week, so very tricky to meet with them personally every week. How do you book these in? So Sabrina, I would open that up to a discussion between the employee and the manager, which is, Alex, we do shift work or we work very odd hours in terms of our schedule, or you're always on the road and I'm in the office. What do you think is the best solution for us to meet on a more regular basis? And it might be that you switch things up a little bit. So for example, we're now international and we have people in the UK and New Zealand and other time zones. And so we have to switch things up. Our sales director does offer evening calls. And so she will, in order, when she has an evening call, she'll let her team know that she's going to start her next morning a little bit later. And she might have a bit of a sleep in or go to the gym in the morning, do yoga or do something for herself. So meeting in the middle. And then Darren, who's over in the UK, will get up early sometimes to meet her in the middle. So switching up those times and not necessarily having them at the same time every single week or fortnight. And we have another question. I work with distributed teams across Sydney and Manila. It seems Manila members don't speak up as much as the Sydney ones in daily stand-ups, even when encouraged. However, they do open up in one-on-one discussions. Any suggestions for the full team to open up in meetings more proactively? Great question, and it is an absolute cultural thing. You know, in Manila, culturally, they are just a little bit shyer. We have found a really great solution here here with our team in Manila, and that is we've asked a couple of people on the team to take the lead in speaking up when it comes to our all hands. So leading by example, and we're slowly starting to see the trickle effect of more people getting comfortable speaking up. And occasionally I'll actually call on people in Manila, or I'll ask someone from our support team to call on someone that they know from their team in Manila to make sure we do get them speaking. It's really not an easy one though, but keep at it and you will get there. Another question. We have one-on-ones, but it turns into people complaining about other people in the team. Any suggestions to change the culture of our one-on-ones? I feel like I'm becoming a counselor. We don't have HR, so I feel like I'm always the sounding board. Great question. So first of all, use the templates that we send out so that you have structured questions that kind of direct the conversation to be more productive and more focused on work and checking in with the employee. Now, if the employee is venting too much, use situation, behavior, and impact. Alex, I don't know if you've noticed, but our last 3 one-on-ones, all you've done is vent. You've never come to the table with a solution. The impact is that I'm starting to think you're disengaged. I'm starting to think you're unhappy. And I'm actually starting to think that you're not living up to our value of teamwork. So you're saying to the person, you're pointing out to them, not only are they venting during the one-on-ones, they're not coming to the table with solutions, and they're also not living a teamwork value. So you're showing them the impact of them just venting. It's okay to vent, but come to the table with a solution. And also ask them for evidence. Quite often you can stop venting if you say, oh, okay, Alex, you've just said you're unhappy with such and such. Could you give me a solid example of where that happened and what happened? And then you're having the person have to go back and actually recall a solid example, and that will help you go into solution mode and help coach them through how to be less unhappy or how to remove that barrier. And another question, how do you handle when you provide someone with feedback about performance improvement, but they gossip and then it gets twisted? This has happened and it makes the manager look bad. Absolutely. So part of giving any kind of performance feedback is that you must stipulate that that performance feedback is confidential. Now, if you're putting someone on a performance improvement plan, make the confidentiality part of the performance improvement plan where there's a consequence, and that is, Alex, I know I'm giving you some harsh feedback on your performance and I need you to improve. I also need to point out to you that this is highly confidential. You can't share this with anyone at work. You can share it with me and my manager above. You can certainly talk to your family about it. You can call the employee assistance program. But unfortunately, if you gossip and talk to people within the workplace about this performance issue and our discussion, then it could lead to termination. You have to have a consequence, because you are correct. If people talk about those performance improvement conversations, things can become toxic really, really badly, or gossip can just get out of control. And we have another question. As a quality assurance officer undertaking internal audits, this has been very helpful in engaging staff in self-auditing their service. Oh, fantastic. I'm great that it's been really helpful. Well, thank you, everybody. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And I really look forward to seeing you. Hopefully, I think we have another webinar coming up next week, which will release the topic of, and Julia in our marketing team, the fabulous Julia, who heads up social and content, has a great calendar coming up for the rest of the year. So I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate you joining. Have a great afternoon.